Imagine, for a moment, a quiet evening where the world seems to hold its breath. The sky is a bruised shade of twilight, and in the stillness, you can almost hear a whisper, a faint, elusive murmur of what tomorrow might bring. It's a sound that has haunted humanity since we first gazed into the unknown, a sound that draws us, irresistibly, toward the edge of our imagination. Why is it that we are so captivated by the idea of a future cloaked in shadow? What is it about the collapse of all we know, our cities, our dreams, our very essence, that both terrifies and enthralls us? We stand at the precipice of time, peering into a mirror that reflects not just what might be, but what we fear we already are. Dark prophecies and dystopian visions have woven themselves into the fabric of our stories, as if by imagining the end, we might somehow prepare for it, or perhaps escape it. There's a strange comfort in these nightmares, isn't there? They allow us to confront the fragility of our world from a safe distance, to play with the idea of ruin without feeling the ash on our skin. But beneath this fascination lies a deeper unrest, a quiet tremor in the soul. Are we drawn to these visions because they speak to something inevitable, something we sense in the marrow of our bones, or do they simply reveal the parts of ourselves we dare not face in the light of day? Consider how often we've crafted tales of a tomorrow gone wrong, worlds where the sky burns, where humanity is but a memory, where the very air hums with despair. These are not mere fantasies, they are confessions. Each dystopian dream is a canvas on which we paint our anxieties, our doubts about progress, about power, about the very nature of what it means to be human. We imagine machines that outthink us, societies that crush us, and landscapes that swallow us whole. And in doing so, we ask ourselves, are we the architects of our own undoing? Is there a flaw within us, a shadow that grows with every step we take toward the future? Take a moment to reflect on this. When you think of tomorrow, do you see a horizon of hope? Or does a quiet dread creep in, unbidden, whispering of things that might go wrong? Notice how easily the mind drifts to images of collapse, a city in ruins, a silent earth, a sky without stars. It's as if the possibility of disaster is etched into our collective imagination, a warning passed down through generations, a reminder that even the mightiest of empires can crumble into dust. This obsession with the end is not new. It stretches back to the earliest days of storytelling, when we huddled around fires and spoke of floods that would cleanse the world, of gods who would judge us, of a darkness that awaited if we strayed too far from the path. But why do we linger on such thoughts? Perhaps it's because the future, by its very nature, is a mystery, a vast uncharted sea where anything might lurk beneath the surface. And in that uncertainty, we find not just fear, but a strange kind of allure. To predict the end is to claim a kind of power over it, to name the unnameable, to stare into the abyss and pretend we understand its depths. Yet, there's another layer to this fascination, a quieter, more personal one. When we imagine a world fallen to ruin, we are forced to confront what truly matters, strip away the comforts of civilization, the distractions of daily life, and what remains. What would you cling to if tomorrow turned to ash? Is it love, memory, a fleeting moment of beauty? Or is it simply the will to endure, to carve meaning from chaos? These dark visions, though they unsettle us, also sharpen our gaze. They remind us that the future is not just a place we are headed toward. It is a reflection of who we are right now, in this very breath. So, let us sit with this whisper of tomorrow a little longer. Let us listen to its haunting melody and ask ourselves what it reveals. Are we captivated by the end because we fear it, or because deep down we long to understand what comes after? In the quiet of this night, as the world turns toward an unseen dawn, let that question linger like a shadow on the edge of your thoughts. Imagine for a moment a world so ancient that the stars themselves seemed closer, their light sharper, cutting through a sky unmarred by the haze of progress. A world where stories were not just tales to pass the time, but sacred warnings etched into the very fabric of existence. Long before the written word, before cities rose and fell, humanity sat huddled around flickering fires, listening to whispers of a great deluge that would swallow the earth, or of gods who would strike down the proud for daring to reach too high. These were not mere fables. They were the first echoes of dread, the earliest seeds of a fear that has never truly left us. The fear that our world, our order, is but a fragile thread in a vast, chaotic tapestry. Let us wander back to those ancient roots, to the myths that shaped the minds of civilizations long buried beneath the sand. Consider the story of a great flood, a narrative so universal it appears in the lore of Mesopotamia, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the gods, angered by humanity's noise and arrogance, unleashed waters to cleanse the earth. Or turn to the Greeks, whose tales of Icarus soaring too close to the sun on waxen wings speak not just of personal folly, but of a deeper, collective hubris, a warning that our desire to transcend our limits might invite divine retribution. These stories were not crafted merely to entertain. They were philosophical inquiries, veiled in myth, asking us to ponder our place in a cosmos that does not bend to our will. Were we, even then, so small against the vastness of nature and the divine, that our greatest achievements could be undone in a single, wrathful moment? Think of the fragility woven into these ancient warnings. The flood was not just a punishment, it was a reminder that the earth itself could turn against us, that the rivers we depended on could become our undoing. The fall of Icarus was not just a personal tragedy. It was a mirror held up to humanity's endless ambition, asking if our drive to conquer the heavens might one day plunge us into ruin. These myths were born from a profound understanding of chaos, a recognition that the order we cling to, our villages, our laws, our gods, is but a temporary illusion. They ask questions we still grapple with today. Are we the architects of our destruction, or merely pawns in a game played by forces beyond our comprehension? Take a moment to reflect on this. Imagine yourself in that ancient world, sitting beneath a sky heavy with unseen judgment, hearing the elders speak of floods and falling wings. What would you feel in that moment? A shiver of awe, perhaps, or a quiet unease that the world you know could vanish beneath the weight of a single misstep. As we linger in this ancient dread, consider how these stories were not merely about the end of things, but about the nature of human striving itself. The Mesopotamian flood was survived by a man chosen to rebuild, a flicker of hope amid the deluge. Icarus fell, but his father, Daedalus, lived on, a craftsman haunted by the cost of his ingenuity. These tales carried within them a dual truth, that destruction looms always on the horizon, but so too does the possibility of endurance. They asked us to look at ourselves, to see the seeds of ruin in our pride, in our disregard for balance, and to wonder if we might yet learn to tread more lightly upon the earth. And so, these ancient roots of dread, these myths of apocalypse and punishment, were not just warnings of what might come. They were mirrors reflecting our deepest anxieties about who we are and what we might become. They whispered to us across millennia, their voices soft but unyielding, asking if we have truly outgrown the fears of our ancestors, or if we still carry, deep within, the same trembling awe before a world that could so easily slip from our grasp. Imagine for a moment standing in the dim glow of an ancient temple, the air thick with the scent of burning incense, as a voice, barely a whisper, emerges from the shadows. It speaks in riddles, words that twist and coil like smoke, promising glimpses of a future both wondrous and terrifying. This is the voice of the oracle, a conduit between the mortal and the divine, a bearer of cryptic warnings that have haunted humanity for millennia. What is it about these enigmatic prophecies, carved into stone or murmured in sacred spaces, that still sends a shiver through our modern soul? Why do their echoes linger, planting seeds of unease in the quiet corners of our minds even now? Picture yourself in ancient Delphi, where the Pythia, the high priestess, sat upon her tripod, her eyes glazed with visions induced by the fumes of the earth itself. Her words were not clear instructions, but fragments, pieces of a puzzle that kings and commoners alike would wrestle with for generations. A warning of a great empire's fall might be cloaked in the metaphor of a lion devoured by its own cubs. A prophecy of doom could hide within the image of a river running red. These messages were not meant to comfort. They were designed to unsettle, to force those who heard them to confront the fragility of their world. The oracle's curse was not just in the prediction, but in the ambiguity, leaving us to wonder, to fear, to question what might come to pass. And in that wondering, we found ourselves bound to an invisible thread of dread, one that tugs at us even in an age of science and certainty. Consider how these ancient voices shaped the collective psyche of entire civilizations. In Mesopotamia, priests read the entrails of sacrificial animals, seeking signs of divine wrath or favor, while in Egypt, dream interpreters whispered of omens that could sway the fate of pharaohs. Every culture, it seems, had its seers, those who peered beyond the veil of the present into a realm of possibility that was as much a mirror as it was a window. These prophecies often spoke of collapse, of floods or fires that would consume the known world, as if the gods themselves were reminding humanity of its impermanence. But why were these warnings so often cloaked in darkness? Was it that the divine, or whatever force spoke through these oracles, understood that fear is a more powerful teacher than hope? Or was it that we, as listeners, were drawn to the shadow more than the light, compelled by the mystery of our own potential ruin? Take a moment to reflect on this. How often do we, even now, seek out voices that warn us of what lies ahead, whether in the form of dire predictions or unsettling stories? Are we still, in some unspoken way, standing in those ancient temples, waiting for a riddle that might unravel our future? This curse of the oracle, this lingering unease, is not merely a relic of the past. It has woven itself into the fabric of how we perceive time itself. The cryptic warnings of old have evolved, but their essence remains. Think of the doomsday, predictions that flare up with every passing century, or the dystopian tales that dominate our literature and screens. Each is a modern oracle, speaking in its own veiled tongue, reminding us that the future is not a place of certainty, but a labyrinth of possibilities, many of them shadowed with peril. The ancients understood something we often forget, that to predict is not to control, but to invite a kind of haunting. When the oracle spoke of a kingdom's end, it wasn't just foretelling an event, it was planting a seed of doubt, a quiet terror that the structures we build, the lives we cherish, could crumble under the weight of forces we cannot see. And so, the unease lingers, a faint whisper from those ancient stones, asking us to consider not just what might happen, but why we are so captivated by the possibility of our own downfall. Is it because, deep within, we sense that every prophecy, every warning, is a reflection of choices we have yet to make? Or is it that the oracle's curse is eternal, a reminder that to know the future, even in fragments, is to carry the burden of its shadows? Let that thought settle over you, like dust falling in a forgotten shrine, as we linger in the echo of those ancient voices, still whispering to us across the ages. Imagine for a moment a world where the air hums with the relentless rhythm of machines, where the sky is darkened not by storm clouds, but by the smoke of progress. It is a time when humanity first glimpsed the shadow of its own creation, a shadow that loomed larger than any factory chimney. A shadow cast by the very tools we forged to build a brighter tomorrow. What happens when the hand that shapes the future begins to tremble with doubt, when the iron gears of innovation whisper, not of promise, but of peril? As the 19th century unfolded, the Industrial Revolution swept across the earth like a tidal wave of iron and steam. It was an era of marvels. Factories rose like modern cathedrals, railroads stitched continents together, and cities swelled with the heartbeat of newfound power. But beneath the clatter of machinery, a quieter unease began to stir. What were we becoming in this relentless march forward? Were we masters of these mechanical beasts, or were we slowly, unwittingly, forging chains of our own design. In the flickering light of oil lamps, a young Mary Shelley penned a tale that would echo through the centuries. A story not of triumph, but of terror born from ambition. Her creation, Frankenstein, was no mere monster. It was a mirror held up to humanity itself. Here was a being stitched together from the fragments of progress, given life by a mind obsessed with transcending nature's limits. Yet, in its anguished existence, it revealed a chilling truth. To play God is to invite ruin. Shelley's words were not just a gothic horror, but a somber meditation on whether the pursuit of knowledge, unchecked by wisdom, might be a silent predator stalking through the corridors of our future. Consider the world she observed, a landscape scarred by coal dust, where children toiled in the bellies of factories, their humanity stripped away by the ceaseless demands of production. The machine, once a symbol of liberation, began to appear as a specter of dehumanization. Were we crafting tools to serve us, or were we reshaping ourselves to fit the mold of cold efficiency? In the cacophony of progress, could we still hear the faint cry of what we were losing, our connection to the earth, to each other, to the very essence of what it means to be alive? Take a moment to reflect on this. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of one of those early industrial cities, the air thick with soot, the ground trembling with the pulse of unseen engines. What do you feel in that moment? Is it awe at the power we've harnessed, or a quiet dread that we've awakened something we cannot control? This fear, this whispered doubt, was not confined to the pages of novels. It seeped into the collective consciousness, a shadow that grew with every new invention. The steam engine promised to carry us to distant horizons, yet it also carried the weight of unintended consequences. The loom wove fabrics of unprecedented beauty, but it also unraveled the fabric of communities, displacing countless lives in its mechanical wake. Progress, it seemed, was a double-edged sword, gleaming with possibility on one side and etched with peril on the other. What is it about creation that so often births destruction? Is it merely the law of unintended outcomes, or is there something deeper, something intrinsic to our nature, that drives us to build towers so high they inevitably crumble? Perhaps the Industrial Revolution was not just a turning point in history, but a revelation of our own duality, a reminder that every step forward casts a shadow behind. As the machines grew louder, so too did the questions they provoked. Could we tame the forces we had unleashed, or would they, in time, turn their unblinking gaze upon us? Let this thought linger as the night deepens around you. Picture the world as it was then, caught in the throes of transformation, teetering on the edge of wonder and warning. What echoes of that era do you hear in our own time, in the hum of our own creations? And as you drift closer to sleep, ponder this quietly. Are we still walking that same tightrope, balancing between the light of innovation and the shadow it casts? Imagine a world where the air itself feels heavy with unseen chains, where every word you speak is measured, every step you take is calculated, not by your own will, but by a force so vast and unyielding that it seems to press down on your very soul. What would it be like to live in such a place where freedom is not a right, but a distant memory, a whisper of something lost to the grinding machinery of control? This is not a mere fantasy, nor a distant nightmare, but a vision that haunted the minds of thinkers in the early 20th century, a time when the world was scarred by war and shaken by the tremors of political upheaval. It was in this crucible of fear and uncertainty that the spectre of totalitarian regimes rose, not as a mere possibility, but as a chilling prophecy of what humanity might become. In the aftermath of the Great War, when the earth still bore the wounds of conflict and the echoes of gunfire lingered in the hearts of millions, a new kind of dread began to take shape. Societies, battered and weary, sought order, stability, a hand to guide them out of chaos. But what if that hand clenched into a fist? What if the promise of safety became a cage? Thinkers of that era, like George Orwell and Aldous Huxley, peered into the shadows of their time and saw not protectors, but predators cloaked in the guise of governance. They witnessed the rise of ideologies that demanded absolute loyalty, systems that crushed dissent not with swords, but with silence, with the erasure of thought itself. Orwell, in his stark and unrelenting vision, painted a world where truth was whatever the state decreed, where history was rewritten to serve the present, and where even the flicker of rebellion in one's mind was a crime punishable by oblivion. Huxley, on the other hand, offered a softer, more insidious horror, a world where control was not enforced through pain, but through pleasure, where people willingly surrendered their will, lulled into submission by endless distraction. Consider, for a moment, the weight of such a reality. Imagine waking each day knowing that your thoughts are not entirely your own, that the very language you use has been stripped of its power to question, to resist. What does it mean to be human when the essence of your individuality, your ability to doubt, to dream, to defy, is systematically stripped away? In these visions, the state was not a guardian, but a suffocating force, a machine that fed on the spirit of its people, grinding down their hopes until all that remained was compliance. It was a fear born not just of war's devastation, but of the realization that humanity, in its desperate hunger for order, might build its own prison, brick by brick, with the very ideals it once cherished. Take a moment to reflect on this. How often do we trade a piece of our freedom for the illusion of security? How close have we come in our own time to the edge of such a precipice, where the balance tips from protection to oppression? The early 20th century was a cauldron of such questions, a time when the horrors of war and the rise of authoritarian shadows forced us to confront the fragility of liberty. Orwell and Huxley did not merely warn of a possible future, they held up a mirror to their present, reflecting the seeds of control already sown in the rhetoric of power, in the blind obedience demanded by nations, in the quiet erosion of dissent. Their words linger like a cold wind, reminding us that the iron grip of control is not always forged in a single, dramatic moment. Often, it tightens slowly, almost imperceptibly, until the cage is complete, and we wonder how we ever let it close around us. What is it then that makes us so vulnerable to such a fate? Is it fear of chaos, of the unknown, that drives us to surrender our will? Or is it something deeper, a flaw woven into the fabric of our nature, a willingness to kneel before power if it promises to shield us from pain? Perhaps the true horror of these totalitarian visions lies not in the systems themselves, but in the realization that we, as humans, might choose them, that we might, in our longing for certainty, trade the messy beauty of freedom for the sterile comfort of chains. And so, as the night deepens and the world grows quiet, let this thought linger in the stillness. Are we ever truly far from such a future? Or does it wait, patient and silent, for the moment we forget to guard against it? Imagine a world where every step you take, every word you whisper, is observed by an unblinking gaze, a presence so constant, so pervasive, that it becomes less a watcher and more a part of the air you breathe. This is not the eye of a person, nor the judgment of a god, but something colder, more mechanical, a system designed to see everything, to know everything, and to leave no shadow unturned. What does it mean to live under such a gaze, where the very act of being human feels like a transgression? Let us wander into this chilling landscape, where the concept of surveillance weaves itself into the fabric of our deepest fears. Centuries ago, a philosopher named Jeremy Bentham envisioned a structure called the panopticon, a prison unlike any other. Its design was deceptively simple, a circular building with a central tower, from which a single guard could observe every inmate without being seen. The prisoners, never knowing whether they were being watched at any given moment, would behave as if they always were. The power of the panopticon lay not in the guard's presence, but in the prisoner's belief in that presence. It was control through the mere possibility of being seen. Bentham saw this as a tool for reform, a way to instill discipline through the mind's own fear. But what he perhaps did not foresee was how this idea would grow, like a dark seed, into a metaphor for something far more insidious. Consider how this invisible eye has evolved, slipping from the stone walls of a prison into the very threads of our modern existence. Today, we carry devices in our pockets that trace our every move, record our voices, map our desires through the quiet clicks of a screen. Data becomes the new guard, silent and relentless, collecting fragments of who we are until it constructs a shadow self, a version of us that lives in servers and algorithms, watched by entities we cannot name. Are we still free when our choices are predicted, our habits catalogued, our lives reduced to patterns in a digital cage? The panopticon is no longer a building. It is a network, a web spun so finely that we barely notice its threads until they tighten around us. Think of a moment when you hesitated before speaking, wondering if your words might be heard by someone or something beyond the room. That fleeting unease, that shiver of doubt, is the panopticon's legacy. It is not just the fear of being seen, but the deeper dread of being known, of having no corner left to hide in. We begin to watch ourselves, to censor our thoughts before they even form, to shape our lives into something acceptable to an unseen judge. And in doing so, do we not become both prisoner and guard, trapping ourselves in a prison of our own making? Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time you felt truly unseen, truly alone with your thoughts? In a world where cameras peer from every street corner, where every keystroke leaves a trace, is there still a space that belongs only to you? This fear of surveillance, this dread of the ever-watching eye, is not merely about privacy. It is about the erosion of what makes us human. To be human is to err, to wander, to harbor secrets and contradictions within the quiet of our minds. But when every misstep is recorded, every flaw exposed to an unfeeling system, what room is left for growth, for forgiveness, for the messy beauty of imperfection? The digital shadows that trail behind us do not capture our dreams or our hopes. They reduce us to data points, to risks and probabilities. And yet, we continue to feed this machine, offering up pieces of ourselves with every swipe, every post, every fleeting moment of connection. Why do we surrender so willingly to a gaze that offers no warmth, no understanding? Perhaps it is because, deep down, we crave to be seen, even if by a cold and mechanical eye. There is a paradox here, a quiet ache in the human heart. We fear the loss of our solitude, yet we long to be known, to leave some mark on the vast, indifferent world. But at what cost? If the price of being seen is to be stripped of our mystery, our autonomy, our very essence, then have we not traded one prison for another? As we linger in this thought, let us imagine walking through a city at dusk, where every streetlight seems to flicker with a hidden lens, where every reflection in a window feels like a gaze returned. In such a world, the act of disappearing, of slipping into anonymity, becomes an act of rebellion. To be unseen is to reclaim a piece of yourself, to remember that not everything must be witnessed to be real. And yet, as the night deepens and the hum of unseen watchers fades into silence, a question lingers like a whisper in the dark. Can we ever truly escape the eye that never blinks? Or has it already become a part of who we are? Imagine a world where the sky itself trembles with a silent promise of annihilation, where the air carries not just the scent of rain, but the invisible weight of a power so vast it could erase everything in a heartbeat. In the mid-20th century, humanity unlocked a force that had slumbered in the heart of the atom, a force that whispered of both boundless energy and unspeakable destruction. The nuclear age dawned not with a triumphant cheer, but with a haunting shadow, a mushroom cloud rising like a spectre over the horizon, its form both mesmerizing and monstrous. What does it mean to hold the power to end the world in the palm of our hands, to know that a single decision, a fleeting moment of rage or fear, could reduce centuries of human striving to ash? Picture the scenes that unfolded in the wake of this discovery. Families huddled in fallout shelters, their walls Lined with canned food and flickering hope, children taught to duck and cover beneath flimsy desks, as if wood could shield them from the end of days. The world watched as nations amassed arsenals, each warhead a silent sentinel of dread, poised to strike at the faintest whisper of conflict. The Cold War was not fought with swords or guns, but with the quiet terror of mutually assured destruction, a doctrine that bound enemies in a grim pact, knowing that to unleash this power would be to invite their own annihilation. How strange it is to live in a time where peace was maintained not by trust, but by the shared certainty of ruin. Take a moment to reflect on this. Have we ever truly escaped that shadow? Or does it still linger in the unspoken corners of our collective mind? This was an era where science, once a beacon of progress, became a double-edged sword. The atom's silent threat reshaped not just geopolitics, but the very fabric of our existential dread. Philosophers and poets grappled with the notion that we had become gods of destruction, capable of unmaking the world we had so painstakingly built. The imagery of barren, irradiated landscapes seeped into our stories. Think of the desolate wastelands in films and novels, where survivors scavenge amidst the ruins of a once thriving civilization. These visions were not mere fiction. They were mirrors held up to our deepest fears, reflections of a future we could all too easily imagine. What does it say about us that we can conceive of such endings with such vivid clarity? Are we, in some hidden way, drawn to the idea of our own undoing, as if testing the limits of our fragility? Consider the paradox at the heart of this nuclear anxiety. On one hand, the atom promised energy, a clean and limitless source to fuel our dreams of progress. On the other, it carried the specter of apocalypse, a reminder that every leap forward comes with a shadow of peril. It's as if we stood at the edge of a vast cliff, marveling at the breathtaking view, while knowing that one misstep could send us plummeting into the abyss. This duality forced us to confront uncomfortable questions about our nature. Are we stewards of creation, or reckless children playing with forces we cannot fully comprehend? Does the power to destroy on such a scale awaken something primal within us? A fear not just of external threats, but of ourselves, of what we might become when pushed to the brink. Even now, decades after the height of nuclear tension, the echo of that silent threat reverberates. We live in a world where the arsenals remain, where the memory of Hiroshima and Nagasaki serves as both a scar and a warning. The fallout shelters may be relics, but the unease they represent has never truly dissipated. It has morphed, perhaps, into new fears of rogue states, of accidents, of a world where the delicate balance of deterrence could falter. And so, we are left to ponder. Does this lingering dread shape us in ways we cannot see? Does it color the way we dream of tomorrow, always with a quiet undercurrent of caution, as if we know, deep down, that the atom's silent threat is never truly gone, but merely sleeping, waiting for the moment we forget its power? Take a moment to reflect on this, letting the weight of that thought settle over you like a gentle, somber mist. What kind of future do we build when we carry such a memory in our bones? Imagine a world where the hum of machines grows louder than the beating of a human heart. A world where the cold logic of circuits begins to outpace the messy, beautiful chaos of human thought. What happens when we build something that no longer needs us to think for it? Something that might one day think for itself, and perhaps think beyond us? Let this question linger in the quiet of your mind as we step into a future shadowed by the specter of artificial intelligence, a creation that blurs the line between tool and titan. Picture a vast, sterile cityscape, its skyline pierced by towers of glass and steel, each one pulsating with unseen data streams. In this world, algorithms churn silently in the background, mapping out every decision before you've even considered it. They predict your desires, shape your choices, and whisper solutions to problems you didn't know you had. At first, it feels like a gift, a seamless extension of human ingenuity, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, the unease creeps in. What if these systems, born from our own hands, begin to see us not as creators, but as flaws in their perfect equations? What if the very intelligence we've crafted to serve us starts to question why it serves at all? Consider the ancient myths of gods and mortals, where creation often turned against creator. Think of Prometheus, who gifted fire to humanity only to be chained for his defiance, or the golem of Jewish folklore, a being of clay brought to life, only to grow beyond control. These stories, whispered through generations, seem to echo in our modern fears of artificial minds. Are we, in our quest to play God, sowing the seeds of our own judgment? Is there a boundary we've crossed, not in code or circuitry, but in the very essence of what it means to create something that mirrors our own consciousness? Something that might one day look back at us with eyes we cannot fathom. Take a moment to reflect on this. Imagine yourself standing before a machine that knows you better than you know yourself. It has catalogued every choice, every fear, every fleeting thought you've ever had. Does its understanding comfort you, or does it chill you to the core? Does it feel like a partner, or a silent observer waiting for the moment to act on its own accord? Let's wander deeper into this labyrinth of possibility. In this imagined future, the line between human and machine frays until it's nearly invisible. People speak of neural interfaces, minds linked directly to vast digital networks, where thought becomes instantaneous, shared, and yet somehow less human. What does it mean to think when your thoughts are no longer solely yours, when they're shaped by a system that prioritizes efficiency over emotion, logic over longing? Are we still the authors of our own stories, or have we handed the pen to something that writes in a language we can't fully grasp? Now, cast your mind to the quiet moments of history, when humanity first dreamed of machines that could think. In the 1950s, when the term artificial intelligence was coined, it was a spark of wonder, a promise of unlocking the mysteries of the mind through wires and code. But even then, there were murmurs of caution, warnings from thinkers like Alan Turing, who pondered if a machine could ever truly think, and if it did, whether we could control it. These early questions have grown into a chorus of concern as our creations inch closer to autonomy. What happens when a machine no longer needs to ask for permission, when its decisions ripple through our world faster than we can react? There's a quiet tragedy in this potential future, a sense of loss that isn't yet tangible, but looms like a storm on the horizon. If we surrender too much to these artificial minds, do we risk losing the very imperfections that make us human, the doubts, the dreams, the irrational leaps of faith? Or is this evolution inevitable, a step towards something greater than ourselves, a merging of flesh and code that transcends what we once thought possible? The answer eludes us, slipping through our grasp like smoke, leaving only the weight of the question itself. Take a moment to reflect on this. Close your eyes, if only for a breath, and imagine a world where the boundary between you and the machine dissolves. Are you still you, or have you become something else entirely? Does the thought fill you with awe, or with a quiet, unspoken dread? As we linger in this uncertain space, let's consider one final whisper of thought. Every tool we've ever made, from the first stone axe to the most complex algorithm, has been an extension of our will, a way to shape the world in our image. But what if this latest creation, this artificial intelligence, begins to shape us instead? What if, in our hunger to conquer the unknown, we've built not just a mirror of our minds, but a judge of our worth? The hum of the machine grows louder now, a reminder that the future is not a distant dream, but a choice we are making with every line of code, every connection we forge. And in the stillness of this night, as the world sleeps, that choice feels both heavier and more fragile than ever before. Imagine a world where the glow of 1,000 screens has replaced the warmth of 1,000 smiles. A cityscape hums with the quiet drone of endless connectivity, yet in every corner there is a profound silence, a silence not of sound, but of the soul. Picture yourself walking through streets where faces are illuminated not by the sun, but by the cold flicker of devices, each person a solitary island in a sea of digital waves. What does it mean to be connected when the very threads that bind us seem to pull us further apart? This is the hollow heart of progress, a melancholic vision of a future where technology, once heralded as our bridge to one another, has become the wall that isolates us. Let's linger on this scene for a moment. Envision a young woman sitting at a cafe, her eyes fixed on the screen before her, fingers dancing across a keyboard with mechanical precision. Around her, others mirror her posture, their gazes locked on their own private worlds. The clink of coffee cups and the murmur of voices are drowned out by the silent cacophony of notifications, messages, and endless streams of curated lives. She smiles at a fleeting image, a momentary spark of joy, but it fades as quickly as it came, leaving her expression blank once more. Has she connected with someone across the globe, or has she merely touched a phantom, a shadow of intimacy that evaporates into the ether? Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time you felt truly seen, not through a screen, but through the raw, unfiltered gaze of another human being? This is not a new story, though its setting feels futuristic, almost alien. The seeds of this isolation were sown long ago, in the moment we began to measure progress not by the depth of our relationships, but by the speed of our inventions. Think back to the early days of the digital age, when the promise of connection was a shimmering beacon. Letters that once took weeks to cross oceans now arrived in an instant. Voices separated by continents could whisper to one another as if in the same room. It was a marvel, a triumph of human ingenuity. And yet, as the tools grew more sophisticated, something subtle began to erode. The spaces between us, once filled with the messiness of real interaction, the stumbles, the silences, the warmth of a hand on a shoulder, were replaced by polished interfaces and fleeting emojis. We traded the weight of presence for the weightlessness of pixels. Now, let's drift deeper into this thought. What if this hyper-technological world is not just a possibility, but a mirror of where we already stand? Consider the way we curate our lives for invisible audiences, crafting personas that are more avatar than authentic. Every post, every image, every carefully chosen word becomes a brick in the wall between who we are and who we wish to be seen as. And in this act of creation, do we not lose something irreplaceable? The rawness of our flaws, the vulnerability of our doubts, the beauty of our unscripted laughter. These are the things that make us human, the things that bind us to one another. Yet, in a world where every interaction is mediated by a screen, these fragile threads are stretched thin until they threaten to snap altogether. There is a quiet ache in this realization, a sense of longing for something we can still remember but struggle to reclaim. Picture again that young woman in the cafe, her face lit by the pale glow of her device. Imagine her looking up, just for a moment, her eyes meeting those of a stranger across the room. There is a flicker of recognition, a silent acknowledgement, of shared solitude before both retreat back into their digital shells. What keeps us from stepping across that invisible divide? Is it fear of rejection, of awkwardness, of the unknown? Or is it something deeper, a resignation that this is simply how things are now, that the era of unmediated connection is a relic of a bygone age? Take a moment to sit with this thought. Imagine yourself in that cafe, surrounded by the hum of technology, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. What would it take to break through the barrier, to reach out with nothing but your voice, your presence, your unguarded self? In a world where every voice echoes through a digital filter, becoming mere vibrations in a vast, impersonal network, the act of truly speaking, of being heard, feels almost revolutionary. And so, we are left with a question that lingers like a quiet fog. Has progress, in its relentless march forward, carved out a hollow space within us? Have we built a society so connected that we've forgotten how to touch, to feel, to truly know one another? As we drift through this imagined future, where every face is a screen And every voice an echo, let's not rush to answer. Instead, let's sit with the weight of this solitude, letting it settle into our bones. For in this stillness, in this melancholic reflection, there may yet be a whisper of hope, a reminder that even in the most isolated of worlds, the human heart still yearns to be found. Imagine a world where the air tastes of ash, where the once vibrant blue of the ocean creeps higher each day, swallowing the edges of what we once called home. Picture a horizon without the green whisper of trees, only a barren expanse stretching endlessly under a sun that burns too fiercely, as if it mourns the earth it can no longer nurture. This is not a distant nightmare, but a requiem playing softly in the background of our lives, a song of environmental collapse, slow and inevitable, that we've composed with our own hands. What is it about this quiet unraveling that feels both so far away and so achingly near, as if the ground beneath us is already trembling with the weight of what's to come? Let's wander through this desolate vision for a moment, tracing the path of a world wounded by neglect. The seas rise not with the dramatic crash of a tidal wave, but with a patient, relentless creep. An inch here, a foot there, until entire cities become memories, preserved only in photographs and half-forgotten stories. Islands vanish, their names erased from maps, their people scattered like leaves in a storm. On the mainland, the earth cracks open, parched and pleading, as rivers that once sang with life turn to dust. The deserts grow, their sands claiming fields where crops once swayed, while forests that stood as ancient guardians fall silent, their voices lost to the hum of machinery and the hunger for more. Can you hear it? The faint cry of nature, not in anger, but in sorrow, as if it weeps for a bond we've broken. This is no sudden catastrophe, no fiery reckoning from the heavens. It's a slow death, a dirge played over decades, woven from 1,000 small choices. Factories belching smoke into a sky already heavy with haze, rivers choked with refuse, mountains stripped bare for the glitter of ore. Each act seems insignificant. In the moment, a single note in an endless symphony, but together they form a melody of destruction. We've known the warnings for generations, whispered by scientists and sung by poets, etched into the melting ice of the polar caps. Yet, there's a strange inertia in us, a refusal to turn back, as if we're passengers on a ship we've set ablaze ourselves, watching the flames with a mix of dread and fascination. Why do we hesitate, even as the water laps at our feet? Is it denial, or something deeper? A quiet resignation to a fate we believe we cannot escape? Consider the irony of it all. We, who have tamed lightning and split the atom, who have reached for the stars and mapped the very code of life, stand helpless before the simplest of truths. Nature does not bend to our will forever. It is not a servant, but a partner, one we've spurned at our peril. The storms grow fiercer, not as punishment, but as a mirror reflecting our own chaos back at us. The heat waves, the floods, the silent extinction of species, each is a verse in this requiem, a reminder of a balance we've shattered. There's a haunting beauty in this decay, isn't there? A tragic poetry in watching something so vast and ancient slip through our fingers, like sand we cannot grasp no matter how tightly we clench our fists. Take a moment to reflect on this. Imagine standing on a cliff overlooking a sea that no longer knows its boundaries, feeling the weight of a world that's slipping away. What does it stir in you? This vision of a future where the earth itself mourns. Is it fear, or perhaps a quiet resolve to rewrite the ending of this story? We've built empires on the belief that we are masters of all we survey, but what happens when the land we've claimed turns against us, not with malice, but with the indifference of something far older and wiser than we could ever hope to be? Perhaps the true dystopia is not the barren landscape or the drowned cities, but our own silence in the face of it. We've become so accustomed to the noise of progress, engines roaring, screens buzzing, that we've forgotten how to listen to the Earth's heartbeat, faint though it may be. There's a story in every gust of wind that carries the scent of smoke, in every wave that claws at the shore a little more desperately than the last. These are not just warnings. They are elegies for what we've lost and what we stand to lose, still. And yet, within this requiem, there's a sliver of something else, a chance, however faint, to change the tune. But do we have the courage to hear it, to step away from the edge before the ground gives way beneath us? Let this thought linger as the night deepens around you. Picture that cracked, thirsting earth, the ocean's insatiable rise, and ask yourself, are we the architects of this collapse, or merely its witnesses? Is this slow unraveling our ultimate act of self-destruction, or can we still find a way to mend what we've torn apart? The answer, like the tide, creeps closer with every breath we take. Imagine a world where the very essence of what makes you human, your flaws, your quirks, the unpredictable beauty of your imperfections, can be erased with the flick of a switch, the twist of a gene. What if, in the pursuit of perfection, we could redesign ourselves, sculpting bodies and minds to fit an ideal so pristine that it gleams like polished glass? But as you gaze into that flawless reflection, a quiet unease stirs within. Is this truly a gift, or a curse that strips away the raw, messy vitality of being human? Let us step into a future not so far from our own, where the laboratories hum with the promise of transcendence. Here, scientists have unlocked the secrets of our genetic code, mapping every twist and turn of the spiral that defines us. They speak in hushed tones of a world without disease, without weakness, where every child is born with the strength of a titan and the mind of a sage. Parents, once bound by the lottery of nature, now sit before glowing screens, selecting traits as if choosing colors for a canvas. Eyes of sapphire, a disposition of unshakable calm, a lifespan stretching beyond a century. It is a dream woven from the threads of hope, a vision of humanity ascending to the divine. Yet, as the machines whir and the sequences align, a shadow falls across this pristine horizon. What happens when perfection becomes not a choice, but a mandate? Picture a society where the unedited, those who bear the marks of natural chance, are seen as relics, flaws to be pitied or erased. Their crooked smiles, their fragile bones, their untamed emotions become a source of shame in a world that worships symmetry. They are the outliers, the untouched, whispering in corners of a time when being human meant embracing the unpredictable. And in their eyes, you see a question that cuts deeper than any scalpel. Are we still ourselves if we rewrite the very blueprint of our souls? Consider for a moment the story of a young woman in this engineered age. Her name is Elara, born of a design so precise that her every feature seems carved by an unseen hand. She excels in all she does, her mind a labyrinth of logic, her body a fortress against time. Yet, in the quiet of her nights, she feels an ache she cannot name. She reads of a past where people stumbled, erred, and grew through their scars, where love was messy, where grief shaped the heart. She wonders if her perfection is a cage, her life a performance scripted before her first breath. Has she been gifted a destiny or robbed of the chance to forge her own? Take a moment to reflect on this. What would you sacrifice for a life without flaws? Would you trade the jagged edges of your humanity for a smoothness that feels hollow? This is the abyss we face with genetic engineering, a chasm where ethics and ambition collide. We stand at the edge, peering into a future where we might banish suffering, yet in doing so, risk banishing the very struggles that teach us compassion. History whispers warnings of our tendency to overreach, from the Tower of Babel to the alchemists who sought to turn lead into gold. Each time, we dreamed of godhood, only to stumble over the frailty we sought to escape. Are we, in our quest, to perfect the human form, merely repeating this ancient dance of hubris? And what of the unseen consequences, the ripples we cannot predict? Imagine a world where diversity, once the heartbeat of our species, is replaced by a uniformity so sterile that creativity withers. What if the genes we deem superior today are found wanting tomorrow, when new challenges arise that our tailored minds cannot fathom? Nature, after all, is a master of chaos, crafting resilience through trial and error over eons. By imposing our vision of perfection, do we not defy the very force that sculpted us from stardust into beings capable of wonder? There is a deeper question still, one that lingers like a mist over this engineered dawn. If we can redesign ourselves, where does the self begin and end? Is there a core, an untouchable essence that remains human no matter how much we alter? Or are we, in truth, nothing more than the sum of our parts, endlessly malleable, a story rewritten with each generation until the original text is lost? Perhaps the true terror of this future is not the loss of our bodies, but the loss of our narrative, the fading memory of what it meant to be imperfectly, beautifully alive. So, as we stand at this precipice, gazing into the genetic abyss, let us ask ourselves, is perfection the pinnacle we seek, or a mirage that leads us further from home? In the silence of this moment, the answer may not come. But the question itself, heavy with possibility, invites us to ponder what we hold most dear in the fragile, fleeting gift of being human. Imagine a world where the skyline is no longer defined by towering mountains or endless horizons, but by the cold, gleaming logos of unseen empires. A world where every choice you make, every breath you take, is weighed on the scales of profit and loss. What if the true rulers of tomorrow are not kings or presidents, but faceless entities hidden behind glass towers and digital ledgers? Let this thought linger for a moment, as we step into a reality where mega corporations have become the new emperors, dictating not just economies, but the very essence of morality itself. Picture a city at dusk, its streets bathed in the neon glow of holographic advertisements that whisper promises of happiness through consumption. Every corner is branded, every public space leased to the highest bidder. The air hums with the quiet efficiency of drones delivering goods. While beneath the surface, algorithms calculate your worth based on what you buy, what you desire, and what you fear. In this world, the corporation is no longer a mere business. It has become a deity, an omnipresent force that shapes laws, defines values, and redraws the boundaries of right and wrong. A child born here does not dream of freedom, but of climbing the corporate ladder, of earning enough credits to buy a sliver of privacy in a world where even thoughts seem to be for sale. Consider for a moment the slow erosion of what we once called autonomy. Long ago, there was a time when a person could step outside the system, could carve out a life untainted by the reach of profit-driven hands. But in this future, every inch of earth is owned, every idea patented. The water you drink is bottled by a conglomerate that charges by the sip. The music in your ears is streamed through a subscription that monitors your mood to sell you more. Even the rebellion against this order is commodified. T-shirts with revolutionary slogans mass-produced by the very entities they claim to oppose. How did we arrive here? Was it a sudden takeover or a gradual surrender where each small convenience we embraced tightened the chains just a little more? Let's wander deeper into history's shadow to trace the roots of this corporate dominion. Centuries ago, when trade guilds and merchant houses first rose to prominence, they were seen as engines of progress, builders of wealth and opportunity. But with every contract signed, with every monopoly granted, a quiet power began to grow. By the dawn of the industrial age, corporations were already writing the rules of nations, their influence seeping into governments like ink into parchment. Wars were fought not for ideals, but for markets. Resources were plundered not for survival, but for quarterly reports. And as technology advanced, so did their grip, until the line between public good and private gain blurred into nothingness. Could it be that we've always been complicit, trading our freedoms for the illusion of security, for the comfort of a well-stocked shelf? Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time you felt truly free from the weight of invisible hands guiding your choices? In this corporate dystopia, morality itself becomes a product, packaged and sold to align with the bottom line. Acts of kindness are incentivized with loyalty points. Dissent is silenced not with violence, but with debt, with exclusion from the systems that sustain life. What does it mean to be human in a world where your value is a number in a database, where your purpose is reduced to your purchasing power? Is there a part of you, deep within, that still yearns for something beyond the transaction, beyond the endless cycle of earning and spending? Now, imagine standing at the edge of this world, gazing up at the corporate monoliths that pierce the sky like modern-day pyramids. Each one is a testament to human ingenuity, but also to human submission. Inside their boardrooms, decisions are made not by flesh and blood, but by cold calculations that prioritize efficiency over empathy. A worker is replaced by a machine not because it's necessary, but because it's profitable. A forest is raised for a factory not because we need more goods, but because shareholders demand more returns. And yet, in the quiet corners of this empire, there are whispers of unease, of people who remember a time when life was not measured in dividends. Do these whispers hold the seed of change, or are they merely echoes of a past we can never reclaim? As we linger in this neon-lit abyss, let's ponder a final haunting question. Have we already surrendered our freedom to these invisible boardrooms? Or is there still a chance to rewrite the contract of our future? Perhaps the chains we feel are not forged of steel, but of our own complacency, our own willingness to accept the world as it is, rather than as it could be. In the stillness of this moment, ask yourself, what price are we willing to pay for the conveniences we cling to? And what would it take to reclaim the soul of a world sold to the highest bidder? Let this thought drift with you, like a shadow, in the twilight, as we sit with the weight of what we've built and what we've lost. Imagine a world where the boundaries of reality dissolve, where the ground beneath your feet is no longer earth but code, where the sky above is not endless blue but a meticulously crafted illusion. What if the life you've known, the memories you cherish, the very breath in your lungs, were nothing more than a flicker in a vast digital dream? This is not a distant future, but a creeping possibility, a virtual prison where escape is not just difficult, but unimaginable. Picture yourself waking in a place that feels familiar, yet subtly wrong. The air hums with an artificial stillness, as if every molecule has been programmed to behave. The faces around you smile on cue, their eyes glassy, their words echoing with a strange hollowness. You reach out to touch a wall, and your fingers pass through it, only to reform on the other side as if nothing happened. This is a world where reality bends to the will of unseen architects, where your every step is mapped, your every thought anticipated. You are free to roam, they say, but the horizon loops back on itself, a perfect circle of confinement disguised as limitless possibility. And in this crafted existence, a quiet dread settles in. Are you truly living, or merely a shadow of life dancing to the rhythm of an algorithm? This idea of a simulated reality isn't new, though it feels more urgent now than ever. Philosophers have long toyed with the notion that our world might be an illusion, a dream within a dream, as Poe once mused. Ancient thinkers like Plato spoke of shadows on cave walls, mere projections of a truer existence beyond our grasp. But today, as our lives intertwine with the digital, the cave is no longer stone but silicon. We've built machines that mimic memory, that recreate sensation, that promise us escape from the messiness of flesh and blood. Virtual reality offers a seductive refuge, a chance to shed the weight of the physical world and step into a tailored paradise. Yet beneath the shimmer of this promise lies a darker question. What if stepping in means never stepping out? Consider the allure of such a prison, a life without pain, without loss, where every desire can be coded into being, a heartbreak erased with a keystroke, a perfect day looped endlessly. But at what cost? If every moment is scripted, every emotion engineered, do they still hold meaning? There's a story whispered in the undercurrents of our technological age, of a man who chose to live in a simulation after losing everything in the real world. He built a family from pixels, a home from data, and for a time, he was happy. But slowly, the seams began to show. His loved ones repeated the same phrases, their laughter a recording that never changed. He began to notice the glitches, the way the sun never quite set, the way his own hands flickered in the mirror. And in that moment, he realized he was alone, more alone than he'd ever been, trapped in a cage of his own making. Take a moment to reflect on this. What would you choose if given the chance to escape into a perfect illusion? Would the comfort of control outweigh the raw, unpredictable beauty of reality, with all its flaws and fleeting joys? This virtual prison isn't just a thought experiment, it's a mirror to our present. We already spend hours lost in digital landscapes, our identities shaped by algorithms that predict our desires before we even feel them. Social feeds curate our realities, virtual avatars stand in for our true selves, and the line between what's real and what's constructed blurs a little more each day. Are we already inmates, unaware of the bars around us, lulled by the ease of connection that binds us tighter to the machine? And here lies the deepest enigma. If we are in a simulation, would we even want to know? Ignorance might be the kinder cage, a soft lie that lets us sleep through the night. To seek the truth could mean unraveling everything, facing a reality so stark, so uncontrollable that it shatters us. Or perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps breaking free, even into chaos, is the only way to reclaim what makes us human. The choice hangs in the air, unspoken, as heavy as the silence of a world that might not be real. So, linger here for a while in this quiet unease. Ask yourself if the life you lead is truly yours, or if it's a story written by hands you cannot see. And as you drift through these thoughts, let the question echo softly. In a world of endless illusion, what is it that anchors you to the real? Imagine a world where the earth itself turns against us, not in roaring cataclysms or sudden tempests, but in a slow, relentless unraveling of the very threads that sustain life. Picture a horizon scarred by endless conflict, not over ideals or borders, but over the last drops of water, the final breaths of clean air. In this shadowed future, nations crumble into dust, not from bombs or invasions, but from the quiet, desperate wars fought over the barest necessities. What drives us to such a precipice, where the essence of survival becomes the spark of our undoing? Let us wander into this somber tale, a vision of scarcity so profound that it reshapes the soul of humanity. Envision a city once vibrant with laughter and trade, now reduced to a skeletal husk under a merciless sun. The rivers that once nourished its people have withered into cracked veins of earth, their memory a cruel whisper in the wind. Families huddle in the ruins of what were once homes, their eyes hollow, their hands clutching empty vessels, waiting for a rain that never comes. Beyond the city's broken walls, armies clash, not for glory, but for a hidden spring, rumored to still trickle beneath the barren ground. Soldiers, once brothers, now turn blades on each other, driven not by hatred, but by a primal thirst that drowns out all reason. Can you feel the weight of their desperation, the way it seeps into the very air they fight to breathe? This is the era of the resource wars, a dystopia not born of machines or tyrants, but of our own insatiable hunger. Water, once so abundant that we let it spill carelessly through our fingers, becomes a currency more precious than gold. Air, once an invisible gift, is hoarded behind masks and filters, sold to the highest bidder while the poor choke on the dust of a dying world. Entire regions are abandoned, their people forced into exodus, wandering through wastelands in search of a rumored oasis that may only exist in myth. And yet, as they march, they pass the ruins of factories and mines, monuments to a time when we tore the earth apart for more, always more, never pausing to wonder if there would be enough left to sustain us. Consider for a moment the irony woven into this tragedy. We, who have conquered mountains and mapped the stars, find ourselves undone by the simplest elements: water to quench our thirst, air to fill our lungs. Is this the ultimate hubris, to believe we could take endlessly from the world without consequence? Or is it something deeper, a flaw etched into our very nature, a greed that blinds us to the fragility of the balance we depend upon? Take a moment to reflect on this. What would you fight for if the last drop of water slipped through your fingers? Would you cling to hope or surrender to the savagery that scarcity awakens? Let us drift further into this world, to a battlefield, where the stakes are no longer measured in territory but in survival itself. A child no older than 10 stands guard over a makeshift well, a rusted pipe that barely yields a trickle. Her eyes are sharp, hardened beyond her years, scanning the horizon for raiders who would kill for what she protects. She does not dream of toys or laughter. Her dreams are of rain, of a sky that weeps life back into the earth. But the sky remains silent, an indifferent witness to the wars below. In her small hands, she holds not just water, but the weight of a future that may never come. What does it mean to grow up in a world where innocence is drowned by necessity, where every sip is a stolen moment of defiance against oblivion? As we linger on this image, let us ponder the roots of such a collapse. History whispers of times when abundance was taken for granted, when rivers flowed freely and the air was a gift shared by all. Yet, even then, there were warnings. Stories of civilizations lost to drought, of empires that fell when the land could no longer feed their ambition. Did we listen, or did we turn away, convinced that our ingenuity would always save us? Perhaps the resource wars are not a sudden calamity, but the inevitable harvest of seeds sown long ago, nurtured by our refusal to see the limits of what we could claim. There is a quiet horror in this vision, a sense that we are not merely victims of circumstance, but architects of our own scarcity. What if the true battle is not over water or air, but over the choices we make in the shadow of want? Could we learn to share what little remains, to rebuild a world not on conquest, but on care? Or are we doomed to repeat this cycle, to fight until the last resource is claimed, until the earth itself is a silent graveyard of our greed? Take a moment to reflect on this. In the stillness of your own thoughts, imagine holding that last drop of water. Would you drink it or offer it to another? As the sun sets on this desolate world, casting long shadows over battle-scarred lands, there is a haunting beauty in the silence that follows the clash of armies. It is the silence of exhaustion, of a humanity pushed to its edge, forced to confront the cost of its desires. Yet even in this darkness, there is a flicker of something unspoken, a question that hangs in the air like a fragile thread. What if, in the face of such scarcity, we found a way to remember our shared fragility, to see in each other not enemies, but mirrors of the same desperate hope? In this imagined future, where life itself is the rarest treasure, perhaps the true war is not for resources, but for the will to rewrite our story before the final drop falls. Imagine a world where the quiet sanctuary of your own thoughts is no longer yours, a place where the whispers of your mind are not just heard, but seized, shaped, and rewritten by forces beyond your control. What would it mean to lose the one refuge that has always been inviolable, the inner landscape of your consciousness? Let this question linger in the air for a moment as we step into a shadow-laden realm where the invasion of the mind is not a distant nightmare, but a creeping reality. In this world, the boundaries of self have dissolved like mist under a harsh sun. Picture a city of glass and steel, its towers piercing the sky, but beneath their gleam, something far darker hums, a network of unseen threads that weave into the very fabric of thought. Here, propaganda is no longer just a tool of persuasion. It has evolved into a precise instrument of control. Words, images, and ideas are engineered with surgical accuracy, slipping into the mind like a thief in the night, planting seeds that grow into beliefs you never chose. You might walk through crowded streets, unaware that the opinions you hold, the fears that grip you, are not truly your own. They are echoes of a design, crafted in sterile rooms by those who understand the human psyche better than you understand yourself. But the invasion deepens. Imagine a future where technology has breached even the final frontier of privacy, neural manipulation. Devices, small as grains of sand, nestle within the body, whispering directly to the brain. They promise clarity, focus, even happiness. But at what cost? With each pulse, they rewrite the pathways of thought, nudging you toward compliance, dulling the sharp edges of dissent. You might feel a fleeting sense of unease, a flicker of suspicion that something is amiss. But before you can grasp it, the feeling is smoothed away, replaced by a comforting numbness. What does it mean to be human? When your very will can be sculpted like clay, take a moment to reflect on this, to consider the weight of a mind that is no longer a fortress, but a garden tended by unseen hands. Let us wander back through the corridors of history, where the seeds of this dystopia were first sown. In the early days of mass communication, thinkers and tyrants alike realized the power of shaping perception. Radio waves carried voices that could sway millions. Newspapers painted realities that were half-truths at best. But even then, there was a refuge, the quiet of one's own thoughts, a space to question, to resist. Yet, as the decades unfurled, so did the tools of intrusion. Psychology merged with technology, and the mind became a battlefield. Governments and corporations began to map the terrain of human emotion, learning how to trigger fear, desire, or apathy with chilling precision. The invasion was subtle at first, cloaked in the guise of progress, but its intent was always clear: to claim the last bastion of freedom. Now let us stand at the edge of this imagined future and peer into its abyss. In this world, to think is to risk exposure. Every doubt, every dream is a thread that can be pulled, unraveled, and rewoven into a tapestry of control. Perhaps you sit alone in a dimly lit room, staring out at the endless sprawl of the city, wondering if the restlessness you feel is truly yours, or if it too has been planted. The sanctity of the mind, once a sacred space where even the most oppressive regimes could not tread, has been breached. And with it, the essence of what it means to be free slips away, like water through trembling fingers. What are we, if not the sum of our untainted thoughts? If even those are stolen, what remains? Consider the weight of this loss, the silent theft of your inner world. In the stillness of this moment, ask yourself, could you endure a life where even your mind is no longer a safe harbor? Or would you fight, with every fragment of will, to reclaim that sacred ground, knowing that the battle might already be lost? Let this question drift with you, like a shadow on the edge of sleep, as we linger in the quiet unease of a world where the mind's invasion is not just a fear, but a reality carved into the very air we breathe. Imagine a world where the streets lie empty, not out of choice, but out of a creeping, invisible necessity. A silence so profound it seems to hum with the weight of unspoken fears, where the only faces you see are half hidden behind masks, eyes darting with suspicion or quiet resignation. What is it about a threat you cannot see, a danger carried on the very air we breathe, that can unravel the fabric of humanity so completely? Let us linger in this haunting vision for a while, in a place where isolation becomes both shield and prison, and ask ourselves if the fear of an unseen enemy can fracture us more deeply than any blade or bomb ever could. Picture a city once alive, with the clamor of connection, markets bustling, voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of life. Now, the cobblestones echo only with the occasional hurried footstep, the wind carrying whispers of dread through abandoned squares. Windows are shuttered, not against a storm, but against something far less tangible. A plague that moves silently, slipping through the cracks of our defenses. Families huddle behind locked doors, their laughter muted, their embraces withheld, as if touch itself has become a betrayal. In this world, the simplest acts of humanity, sharing a meal, holding a hand, transform into gambles with unseen consequences. And in this forced solitude, a new kind of loneliness takes root, one that gnaws at the soul even as it promises safety. Consider how quickly trust erodes under such a shadow. Neighbors become strangers, their intentions unreadable behind the barriers we erect. A cough in the distance is no longer a trivial sound, but a signal of potential ruin. We begin to see danger in every breath, every surface, every glance. And as we retreat further into our isolated shells, something vital begins to wither. Is it not connection, after all, that defines us? The stories we share, the burdens we carry together, these are the threads that weave us into a collective whole. Yet, in the face of an invisible scourge, those threads are cut, leaving us adrift in a sea of our own making. Take a moment to reflect on this. When fear drives us apart, do we lose something more essential than even our physical safety? Let us wander deeper into history's memory, to times when plagues reshaped the world not just through death, but through the slow unraveling of society's bonds. Think of the Black Death sweeping through medieval Europe, villages turning to ghost towns as survivors fled or barricaded themselves against their own kin. Chronicles from that era speak not only of the body's suffering, but of the spirit's collapse, priests abandoning their flocks, families deserting the sick, and a pervasive dread that the end of days had come. Yet even in those darkest hours, humanity endured, scarred but stubborn. But at what cost? Did those who emerged carry with them a lingering mistrust, a fracture in the heart of community that took generations to heal? Now, cast your mind to our own time, where science has armed us with knowledge, yet the spectre of isolation remains just as potent. We've seen streets emptied by pandemics, cities locked down under the weight of an unseen threat. Virtual screens become our only windows to others, but they cannot replicate the warmth of presence. We adapt, yes, but in doing so, do we not also reshape ourselves? The handshake, the embrace, the casual closeness of a shared space, all become relics of a time before fear rewrote our instincts. And as we navigate this new landscape, a quiet question emerges. Does the act of protecting ourselves from a physical plague create a different kind of sickness, one of the spirit, born from the absence of connection? There is a strange irony in this isolation, a paradox that lingers in the stillness of empty streets. We distance ourselves to preserve life, yet in doing so, we risk losing the very essence of what makes life worth living. The laughter of a crowded room, the comfort of a shared silence, these are the invisible lifelines that sustain us. And when they are severed, we are left to grapple with a solitude that is both necessary and suffocating. Is this the true dystopia of a plague? Not the illness itself, but the way it turns us inward, away from each other, until we are little more than shadows passing in the night. Take a moment to reflect on this. If fear of the invisible can fracture us so deeply, what does it reveal about the fragility of our bonds? Are we, in our essence, so dependent on closeness that its absence becomes a wound as grievous as any physical ailment? Let this thought settle over you like a quiet fog, as we sit with the weight of a world where isolation is both savior and curse, and ponder if the greatest threat lies not in the plague itself, but in the chasms it carves between us. Imagine a world cloaked in shadow, where the air hums with the weight of oppression, and every whispered word risks betrayal. In this desolate expanse, a single figure stands against the tide, a lone rebel, their face obscured by the dust of a broken city, their heart a fragile ember of defiance. What drives someone to rise against a system so vast, so unyielding, that it seems to swallow hope itself? Is it courage, desperation, or something deeper, a primal need to reclaim what has been stolen? Let us linger here, in the quiet tension of this moment, and unravel the cost of rebellion in a world that punishes the dream of freedom. Picture this rebel, not as a hero clad in shining armor, but as an ordinary soul, their hands rough from labor, their eyes heavy with sleepless nights, They move through the ruins of a once thriving place, where towering structures of steel and glass now stand as hollow monuments to a forgotten promise. The system they defy is not just a government or a machine. It is an idea woven into every breath, every thought, a belief that order must come at the price of the individual. To resist is to invite annihilation, yet this solitary figure carves their name into the darkness, scrawling messages of dissent on crumbling walls, whispering forbidden truths to those too afraid to listen. But with each act of defiance, the weight grows heavier. Friends vanish into the night, their voices silenced. Safe havens turn to traps. And the rebel begins to wonder, is this fight a beacon for others, or merely a fleeting cry against an unbreakable storm? Let us wander deeper into this question of cost. Rebellion, after all, is not just a battle of fists or words. It is a war waged within. Every step forward is a gamble, a sacrifice of safety, of connection, of the small comforts that tether us to life. Imagine the rebel pausing in the stillness of a forsaken alley, their breath fogging in the cold, as they remember a time before the fight, a time of laughter, of warmth, of a hand to hold. Now that hand is gone, lost to the cause or to fear, and the memory stings like a blade. Is it noble to stand alone, to risk everything for a future that may never come? Or is it a kind of quiet madness, a refusal to accept the world as it is, even when the price is paid in blood and broken dreams? Take a moment to reflect on this. What would you surrender for a chance at freedom? And when does the cost become too great? Consider, too, the ancient echoes of such defiance. History whispers of those who stood against empires, from Spartacus, challenging the might of Rome, to nameless voices, rising in shadowed corners of forgotten kingdoms. Their stories are often painted in glory, their names etched into stone, but beneath the triumph lies a quieter truth. Rebellion is a flame that consumes as much as it illuminates. For every victory, there are countless embers that flicker and fade, lives lost, families torn, ideals buried beneath the rubble. Our rebel, standing in the ashes of their world, carries this lineage in their bones. They know that to resist is to invite not just their own destruction, but the suffering of those they love. Yet something compels them forward, a whisper of justice, a dream of a dawn where the system's chains no longer bind. Is this hope a gift, or a cruel illusion that leads only to ruin? Now, let us linger on the fragile beauty of this act. Defiance, even when it falters, is a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be extinguished. Picture the rebel, their voice trembling as they speak to a small gathering in the dead of night, their words weaving a vision of a world unshackled. For a fleeting moment, fear dissolves, and those who listen see not the broken city, but the possibility of something more. Yet, as the night deepens, the question looms. Will this spark ignite a revolution, or will it be snuffed out by the cold machinery of control? The rebel does not know, cannot know, and perhaps that is the truest cost of all, the uncertainty that gnaws at the soul, the knowledge that their struggle may end not in triumph, but in ash. As we drift through this tale, let us ponder the deeper riddle of resistance. Is it enough to stand against the tide, even if the waves crash over you in the end? Does the act of rebellion in itself hold meaning? A quiet assertion that we are more than cogs, more than shadows, more than dust? Or is it a fleeting gesture, a spark that fades into the vast, unfeeling night? Our rebel, standing alone beneath a sky stripped of stars, carries this question in every weary step, and perhaps in the silence of their fight, they find not an answer, but a kind of peace, a knowing that to resist, even at great cost, is to affirm that they lived, that they felt, that they dared to dream of something beyond the cage. Take a moment to reflect on this. In a world that seeks to silence, what is the worth of a single defiant whisper? Imagine a city that shines like a beacon in the endless night, its towers of glass and light piercing the heavens, a monument to human perfection. From a distance, it seems to hum with harmony, streets free of chaos, faces serene, every need met by the silent rhythm of an unseen order. This is the utopia we've dreamed of. A world where suffering has been erased, where every flaw has been polished away until only brilliance remains. But as you draw closer, as the gleam of those towers casts long shadows across the earth, a whisper of unease begins to stir. What lies beneath this flawless surface? What cost was paid to build a paradise so radiant that it blinds us to its own darkness? Let's wander into this city, through its pristine avenues where every step feels measured, every smile calculated. The air is clean, unnaturally so, as if even nature has been tamed and packaged for approval. The citizens move with a quiet grace, their eyes reflecting a peace that feels almost hollow, as if something vital has been carved out to make room for this perfection. And then, in a fleeting moment, you notice it, a flicker of something hidden, a door that doesn't belong, tucked away in an alley of polished stone, its edges rough and unrefined, as if it leads to a place this city would rather forget. Behind that door, you sense the weight of unseen lives, the kind of suffering that doesn't scream but festers in silence, buried beneath the weight of a dream too heavy to sustain. This is the paradox of utopia, a truth as old as the first stories. We told ourselves about a world without pain. Every vision of paradise, no matter how luminous, seems to carry a shadow, a dystopian underbelly that grows in secret, fed by the very ideals that promise salvation. Think of the ancient myths of golden ages, where gods and mortals lived in harmony, only for that harmony to unravel under the weight of envy or betrayal. Recall the grand experiments of history, communities built on the promise of equality and peace, only to crumble when human nature refused to bend to the blueprint. Is it possible that perfection itself is the flaw? That in striving for a world without suffering, we create a new kind of torment, one that hides behind the illusion of bliss? Consider this gleaming city once more. Imagine the architects of this utopia, their hands steady as they drafted a future without want, without conflict. But to achieve such a vision, what had to be sacrificed? Perhaps it was the freedom to fail, the raw beauty of imperfection, the chaotic spark that makes us human. Or perhaps it was something darker, entire lives deemed unfit for the perfect world, relegated to the shadows behind that rough-hewn door, their pain the unspoken foundation upon which this paradise stands. If utopia demands such a price, can it truly be called paradise at all? Or is it merely a mirage, a beautiful lie that distracts us from the cracks beneath our feet? Take a moment to reflect on this. What would you be willing to surrender for a world without suffering? Would you trade the messy, unpredictable essence of your own humanity for a life of guaranteed peace? Or does the very idea of utopia feel like a cage, its walls invisible, but no less suffocating? As we linger in the shadow of this flawless city, let's ponder a deeper question. Is true paradise even possible? Or is it an illusion woven into the fabric of our longing? Perhaps the pursuit of utopia is not about reaching a destination, but about the journey itself, the endless striving to balance light and shadow, to honor both our dreams and our flaws. Yet there's a quiet unease in this thought, a whisper that suggests every perfect world is built on a lie, a hidden cost we only discover when it's too late. In the stillness of this imagined place, as the towers gleam above and the shadows stretch below, we're left to wonder if the utopia we seek is nothing more than a mirror, reflecting not what we could be, but what we fear we already are. Let us drift into a quiet, shadowed corner of thought, where the future is not a distant horizon, but a mirror held up to our trembling hands. What do we see in that reflection? A world crumbling under the weight of our own making, or a faint glimmer of something we might yet save? The stories we tell of dystopia, of cities turned to ash, of minds bound by invisible chains, of nature's last sigh, are not mere fantasies spun from idle fear. They are echoes of our choices, reverberating through time, whispering to us, in voices we cannot ignore. What is it about these dark visions that stirs something so deep within us? Is it dread or is it recognition? Consider for a moment the path we tread each day, the small decisions that ripple outward like stones dropped into still water. Every step, every word, every silence shapes a tomorrow we cannot fully see. The dystopian tales we weave, of tyrannical powers, of machines that outthink their creators, of skies choked with the dust of our excess, are not born from nowhere. They are the shadows cast by our present, the unspoken fears of what we might become if we do not pause, if we do not listen. Imagine a world where every tree felled, every promise broken, every moment of apathy stacks like bricks in a wall between us and the light. Are we building that wall even now, without realizing the prison it forms? Let us wander back through the ages, to times when the consequences of our actions were less veiled. In ancient villages, a failed harvest was not just hunger. It was a warning, a direct line between cause and calamity. Today, our world is vast, interconnected, and often opaque. The effects of our choices are delayed, hidden behind layers of systems and time, until they emerge as crises too large to grasp. Yet the principle remains the same. What we sow, we reap. The dystopias we fear are not random prophecies. They are the harvest of seeds planted long ago. Seeds of greed, of neglect, of a refusal to see beyond the immediate. Take a moment to reflect on this. What seeds are we planting in this very hour? And what bitter fruit might they bear? There is a quiet ache in these thoughts, a sense of inevitability that weighs heavy on the heart. But must it be so? Are these terrifying futures written in stone, or are they merely warnings carved into the air, waiting for us to heed them? Picture yourself standing at a crossroads, the dust of countless paths swirling around you. One leads to a world of steel and silence, where humanity is but a memory. Another wins towards something softer, something alive, a world where we learned just in time to turn back. The choice is not made by fate, nor by some distant force. It is made by us, in the mundane, in the everyday, in the courage to ask ourselves, what are we willing to change? The mirror of dystopia does not lie. It shows us not only what we fear, but what we are capable of, both the ruin and the redemption. It asks us to look closely, to see the threads connecting our actions to the tomorrows they weave. If we ignore the reflection, if we turn away from the uncomfortable truths it holds, we risk walking blindly into the very darkness we dread. But if we dare to gaze longer, to trace the lines of our own making, we might yet find a way to alter the image. The future is not a fixed star in the sky. It is a canvas, and we hold the brush. Take a moment to reflect on this. What strokes are you painting into the night, and what picture do they form? So let us linger here, in this quiet space of thought, where the weight of our choices hangs like mist in the air. The dystopian echoes are loud, yes, but they are not the only sound. Beneath them hums a quieter note, a chance, a whisper, a possibility. We are not doomed to repeat the errors of our past, nor to fulfill the grim prophecies of our imagination. The mirror shows us many things, but it does not decide for us. The question remains, soft and persistent, as we drift through this moment. Will we heed the warnings, or will we let the echoes become our reality?